Okay, so let us get started. And all right, so dear students and colleague, first of all, let me wish you all a very happy Republic Day. What a great day to actually start this new activity. So we are very pleased to start this Omics Boot Camp, uh, which is a journal club on this very auspicious occasion. So Boot Camp, as some of you already know, it started as the virtual WhatsApp group in 2017. And at that time, we conducted one a mass spectrometry boot camp workshop. And after the event was over, then actually I asked participants their opinion whether they want to continue the group or they want to close the group, but they wanted to remain connected. And over the time, then there are more MOOC students and other workshop participants and other college students. They started joining. And very recently, we just shifted from the WhatsApp group to Telegram because we have large number of participants who are joining this group. And it is difficult to accommodate them. So now we have around 500 members in Telegram online group of Omics Bootcamp India. So this group is essentially involved in discussing the recent research updates happening in the field of proteomics as well as other omics technologies. And while discussing with Dr. Radhika, who is also one of the member of this boot camp, and students, we thought to provide a stimulating platform to the students for the journal club activities so that they can discuss the research as well as also it can give them opportunity to improve their presentation skills because this can be more informal forum for them to present some research papers, discuss the ideas in their peer group, and then they could be also mentored by us to improve their presentation skills. So this is one of the activity which we are starting today as the journal club, which we are going to continue over the months, and it will be happening twice a month, first and third Fridays. Further, Dr. Radhika took initiative of starting a newsletter of Omics Bootcamp India, and that is to provide a platform for the students to contribute short articles and to improve their writing skills. So again, this will also help us to identify which are highly motivating students who can also write well, who can write originally, and then we'll try to provide them more mentorship. We also expect that maybe in future we will have some publications or different type of article outputs from this kind of writing skills and their efforts. So let us take this virtual interaction of our 5 years, which has been a long journey. And I must say now this virtual does not remain any more virtual. We are quite close interacting very much. And we know people by face, we know people by name. And that itself is a big achievement of this kind of, the group, which was not formed as a group, but essentially people of, same mindset, they started coming together and made this group, which is what all of you have made this almost 500 members, and I'm sure it's going to grow further. So we are hoping that this is going to serve to contribute for both the current generation of the students, the next generation of the students, and the research and education commons using omics technologies in India as well as globally. Let me also take this opportunity to thank Dr. Radhika, Dr. Arup, many of the volunteers, especially Amartya, Joshua Stephen, Skanda, uh, Priyanka, many of the students who have really shown a lot of enthusiasm and interest to participate in these activities. And whatever you see, this kind of formal, forum which is being built, it is because of all the people who have worked in background. And I'm sure I'm missing out many names, but yeah, I'm sure Dr. Radhika will fill in those names as well. So thanks to all the volunteers and all the enthusiastic participants who have made this group. And let me wish you all the best for the Journal Club activity as well as your future endeavors. Thank you so much. Let me now invite Dr. Radhika to say a few words.
Thank you, Dr. Sanjeeva. I thank everyone for coming today. Happy Republic Day. I welcome you all to the first Omics Bootcamp Journal Club. This will be an interactive activity. As Dr. Sanjeeva mentioned, it will be for the exchange of scientific ideas by the students in the omics. So it will also provide mentorship to the students, and we will get lots of cross-disciplinary interactions. So we really look forward to some fruitful interactions amongst the various students, and this is your platform. So you make the most of it. There has been a lot of excitement, enthusiasm amongst the volunteers, and it's numerous volunteers who have been helping us out throughout this. In fact, today's speakers are all three volunteers. Skanda Dutt is a speaker, but it's a team, Joshua Stephen as well as Sukriti Maiti. All three of them have worked hard together on today's first talk. And they are all students. So Skanda Dutt is a BSc student in biotech at Kristu Jayanti College. And the other two are also students. The second speaker today will be Surbhi Bihani, who is a PhD student from IIT Bombay. And both topics are on COVID-19, on the pathogenesis, the recurrence, and immune response. So we are very excited that this is actually a place where the students are able to express themselves and feel empowered. And we really look forward to more interactions like this. Thank you. So we can start with the first speaker, Skanda Dutt.
Yes, ma'am. So should I share the presentation now?
You can briefly introduce yourself and then you can share a presentation. So all the best, Skanda, for today's presentation.
Thank you, sir. Good afternoon, everyone present here. My name is Skanda Atreya Dutt. I am presently a second year BSc Biotechnology student in Kristu Jayanti College, Bangalore. So this is a first experience for me. So before I begin, I would like to thank Sukriti Maiti and Joshua Stephen for helping in the slide preparation and the content. And I would also like to wish everyone a happy Republic Day. So let me share my screen. I hope my screen is visible. Yes. So today I will be addressing the topic COVID-19 reinfections. Are they a myth or is it in reality? Let's see. So the topics I'll be touching upon today are the introduction to COVID, how is it diagnosed, and what is COVID-19 reinfection, and what are the mechanisms by which it occurs, what are the frequently asked questions regarding the COVID-19 reinfection, and what is the future direction, that is, what further research can be done with regard to COVID-19. So firstly, I would like to give a general introduction. I don't want to waste much time here because over the last 1 year, we have been fairly acquainted with what is coronavirus. So it's basically called SARS-CoV-2, which is severe acute respiratory syndrome, coronavirus type 2. It's a single stranded positive RNA by the host receptor protein angiotensin converting enzyme isotype 2. Diagnosis. So how is COVID-19 diagnosed? There are two types of tests which can be performed. The first type of test is real-time PCR or RT-PCR, which how it's commonly called. And this test is done to mainly check for the presence of the viral nucleic acids, that is in this case RNA, in the patients. Another type of test can be done for the presence of antibodies in the blood of the patients. This is done only to confirm if the patient has been previously infected with COVID-19. Once the diagnosis is done, we know that the next step is treatment. So suppose a person undergoes a diagnosis for COVID-19 and he tests positive. So then he undergoes the mandatory quarantine period. He has to test the RT-PCR twice negative. And once all this is done, he has to take some care. So the natural care for COVID-19 could be taking adequate rest and keeping oneself regularly hydrated and taking a good, healthy, nutritious diet. In the past year, we have seen that a few drugs have been developed against COVID-19. The notable ones are remdesivir and hydroxychloroquine. However, both these drugs have at times shown that they have some negative side effects on the human system. At present, there are vaccines being developed, and the most notable one, of course, is Covaxin. However, it is important to remember that the vaccines are still in their early stages. It's still the trial phase. So we need to wait for some more time until things settle down and until a large population have been vaccinated and have shown no negative side effects. Natural remedies can also be done, but the studies have not been much done in that field. So we need to see. Over the last 1 year, what we have been seeing in the papers is that once treatment is done, we feel that, okay, COVID is gone, we are all free of it. But we are hearing of reinfection of COVID. Yes, you heard it right, it is reinfection. Now, how does reinfection occur, or why is it occurring? We need to see. Firstly, let us see what exactly is reinfection. So what is a reinfection? Now, suppose there is a person who gets infected with COVID. He undergoes a test, he tests positive, and then he undergoes a quarantine period, he gets treated, and he returns home. Okay, he's happy now that he's negative. After a while, again he starts observing the same symptoms, and he goes and tests himself again. And to his shock, he finds that he's COVID positive again. So this could be said that he has been reinfected with COVID. That is, the virus or the causative, the first time, the same organism has once again entered his body and has caused that disease. So a second infection has followed the first one. So he goes and shows, but how are these reinfections detected? How can you confirm that, okay, this person has been reinfected with COVID-19? So here what they do is, firstly, when he is infected for the first time, they take the RNA from the cells and they sequence the genome of the virus post the reinfection. Subsequent times, when he gets reinfected, they again obtain the RNA of the virus and they sequence it. They compare the genome, they compare the sequences of both the genomes, and in case they observe that most of the sequence is similar, with of course there will be some base mutations and frameshift mutations, then it can be confirmed that he has been infected with the same causative organism, except that it could be another mutant strain, which is why he might have been infected with the virus. So this is a data published by BNO News, where they are actively tracking the COVID-19 infections, reinfections. So this timeline was from 24th August 2020 to 16 January 2021. So here the confirmed reinfections which are reported were to be 39 and 2 deaths. Fortunately, 34 people have recovered from the reinfections. Suspected cases are estimated at 9,721 and suspected deaths are at 26. Regarding the COVID-19 reinfections, many studies have been published, notable being Dao, Huang and Gottret in 2020. About 62 studies have been done, and it is surprising to see that the recovered patients, the percentage of recovered patients across all these studies has varied from somewhere around 3% to about 70%. What could be the result of this high variation? Thinking about this, there are two major types of questions which scientists are pondering on. Let's see what are those. Firstly, are they thinking, due to such high variation, can reinfection with SARS-CoV-2 really happen? Is it really possible? Or whatever is happening, is it because of some issues which are caused due to bias, such as like improper sample handling or false positive RT-PCR, false negative RT-PCR, due to which whatever is negative appears positive and whatever is positive appears negative? Could this be the reason? I don't know, let us see. Well, multiple studies found that both of these could be a case for COVID-19 reinfections. Now, these are some of the possible explanations why reinfection could occur. So we see that there are false negative, false positive, intermittent virus shedding, virus reactivation, reinfection with another SARS-CoV-2 strain, that is a strain which is different from the one which infected a person the first time, and reinfection with the same strain. Let us see each of these in detail. So false negative RT-PCR results. So what is false negative RT-PCR? So here, suppose there is a person who is actually COVID positive. He has a viral RNA in him and he is positive. But though he is positive, the test comes out to be negative. What could be the reason for this? So one of the reasons could be thermal inactivation. We know that SARS-CoV-2 is a very contagious virus, and therefore, while handling it in the lab, it is inactivated at high temperatures. But it should be noted that these high temperatures can cause the RT-PCR machines to work at a lesser efficiency, or this is called as thermal inactivation of the RT-PCR. Some of the other factors which could be affecting this are the sample storage temperature, that is the temperature at which these samples are stored, and also duration. For how long are the samples being stored once they are extracted, once they are isolated from the patient. Many tests have been done, and some notable studies by Zhu et al. And Zi et al. In 2020 who have found that the nasal samples contained higher viral load, that is they had more, you could obtain a better sample from the nasal region than compared to the throat region. Some of the other studies also detected that stool samples contained viral RNA in cases where the nasal and the throat samples did not contain any RNA. So there was too much of variability between the viral RNA content in different samples. Now we consider the false positive RT-PCR results. What is false positive RT-PCR? Okay, now let me give you an example. Suppose there are two people, A and B. So A is actually infected with the coronavirus and B, he is normal. Both of them undergo a test and both of their samples are collected and their RT-PCR is done. Unfortunately, the samples get exchanged so that the person who is negative is given to be positive and the person who is positive is diagnosed to be negative. So the one who is diagnosed negative will now go home thinking that he actually does not have the disease, but he would in fact be spreading to everyone. While the one who was initially negative will now be diagnosed as positive and he will have to undergo treatment. So this could be due to the contamination during diagnosis. Another thing could be cross-reactivity with the other coronaviruses or other viruses, though a study done by Casteran et al. Suggests that the chances of this happening are very less. Intermittent virus shedding. Once the virus enters into the human system, it gets into the cells and it definitely directs the machinery to synthesize the proteins and the cells die. Once the cells died, sometimes they could shed the virus particles into the body, and this is called as intermittent virus shedding. Wang et al. Published a study in which they had patients who had tested RT-PCR negative for the virus twice, but they retested positive in the third test. So due to this study, they felt that this could probably be due to intermittent shedding of the virus. However, it is important to note that this intermittent shedding is highly inconsistent and therefore this cannot be considered as a suitable or a very strong reason for reinfections. The next point is viral reactivation. Now, so there is a virus which could have been probably in an inactive state, but after some time it could get reactivated. So when it's in an inactive state, we might test negative, but once it gets reactivated, we might test positive. So what are the risk factors for viral reactivation? They are virological factors in the host immune status. That is, what is the how strong the immune system is in the particular host, and the degree of immunosuppression. Now, reinfection with another SARS-CoV-2 strain. So SARS-CoV-2, of course, now there are many mutations going on, so multiple strains are existent. When we analyze, we feel that this could probably be a good reason for reinfections because mutations will definitely be possible. Mutations definitely occur for the virus to evolve and survive. And the mutations will mostly occur on the outer coat proteins, the spike proteins, so that the body, the lymphocytes and the other immune cells will not be able to recognize the new strains. So this could give a selective advantage to the virus. So there was one UK variant which came a few months back, that is the SARS-CoV-2 VUI 2020-12/01 strain, and it has 17 mutations, of which 8 are located in the spike protein. So this suggests that the virus is mutating and is evolving at a very rapid rate, and therefore it is able to evade the host system. Hence, there could be many chances of reinfection. The last reason is reinfection with the same SARS-CoV-2 strain. So there are two strains here where studies were performed, HKU1 and OC43, and it was found that reinfection with the same strain occurred. This seems to be less likely because we have memory cells in our body which remember the antigen properties. So an infection by the subsequent infection by the same strain could well be fought by the immune system even before it infects us. However, this reinfection could occur probably because of a weak primary infection, due to which a weak immune response was generated in our body. So therefore a poor memory, and it could also be due to immunosuppression, that is a very poor immune system. Now let us go to some studies. So this was a paper published by Lu et al. In 2020. So here we see on the x-axis they have taken the time scale where they have a discharge day at the center. Towards the left we have all the days from onset to discharge, and to the right we have from discharge to the sampling. That is where the second or the subsequent tests were done. On the y-axis we have the cases, and on the other side we have the neutralizing antibody titer. So here we can see a lot of variations in the day from onset to discharge. However, it was found that the reinfection was not correlated with the duration between the day of onset to day of discharge. There was no correlation between that. In this slide, we see the SARS-CoV-2 genome here. So it has an open reading frame 1A, 1B, the spike protein 3A, and many other proteins. If we closely observe this, we see that the diversity or the entropy is at the highest in the spike proteins region and the regions beyond it. This could probably be because a higher level of mutations in these regions could definitely lead a selective advantage to the virus to survive in its host. If you observe the region ORF1b here, you hardly see any mutations or any variations. This is because most of the housekeeping genes, that is, the genes which are required for the proper functioning of the virus, are located in this particular region, and any mutation introduced in this particular region could lead to the death of the virus. And then there's one more study published in nextgen.org, the source of this study. So here there are different viral clades. So initially when COVID was first discovered in the late 2019, early 2020, the only clade which was there was clade 19A. However, we see that in the period of May to July, there are so many variants or so many different clades which have formed. One probable reason for this could be that during this period, we saw a peak in the number of cases. Many people got infected, and therefore it gave the virus a chance to mutate and develop new variants of itself. As of now, if you see, 19A is almost absent and 20B clade has become the major clade. In India, if you want to see, 20B is the major clade present. So now let us address some of the other popular questions regarding reinfections. So firstly, we might be thinking, okay, now reinfections are going on. So who might be more prone to reinfections? Who's more likely to get affected? First, we have to talk about immunocompromised persons. That is, they are people whose immune systems have been weak, probably due to the presence of some other major disease like diabetes or cancer. Yuan et al. Made a study in which they found that patients under the age of 18 retested positive more often than others. It could probably be because their immune system is yet to develop completely. Persons having a very mild primary infection, this we have, as we have already seen, a very mild primary infection may not trigger a suitable or strong immune response to counter the subsequent infections. And also with persons with uncontrolled diabetes during primary infections. So uncontrolled diabetes will lead to an immunocompromised state, and therefore the immunity may not be very strong. Are reinfections more lethal? So there were this question, to answer this, Yuan et al. Conducted a study where they showed that persons retesting positive for the virus had very less symptoms, and the lesions in the lungs had not worsened from the first time. But these people showed no changes when compared to discharged patients. Another study published by Gausef et al. Has shown that remission of symptoms and even death in reinfected patients has occurred. So having a comorbidity greatly increases the lethality. Now, what we need to know is how early can we get reinfected after recovering from a primary infection? So today we get recovered from COVID. So what is the probability that, okay, after these many days, probably I might get reinfected? Do you think we might have such an idea? Well, reinfection can occur as soon as 4 days. So we need to be really careful. So there were 3 different studies done. Gausef et al., Peng et al., and Zhang et al., all of them published these studies in 2020. And they found out that the number of days after discharge for to retesting positive varied from 4 to 27 days in Gausef et al. Study. Peng et al. Published a study in which 7 to 13 days was a normal average time and 15 days for as per Zhang et al. So it varies from person to person, and it also depends probably on the environmental conditions. So at this step, we need to see what are the steps by how we can ensure that testing undergoes efficiently and false reinfections, or we don't get any false results. Firstly, test the samples within 24 hours. Don't store the samples for a very long time. Also, never store the samples at room temperature. Store them at 4 degrees Celsius. Do multiple RT-PCR tests. At least 4 would be good to avoid the bias before discharging a patient. Also take samples from multiple body parts. Don't just rely on the throat or the nasal swabs. Take it from sputum, stool, nasopharyngeal, different regions, and then arrive at a common result. Also, recovered patients should be better managed. So what are the different fields in which we can do further research? How can we think about how to combat COVID-19? So some of the future directions we can see that to reduce this false positive, we should at least make 2 tests should be performed. So according to the standard sampling and assay protocol, the samples should be taken from different parts in order to avoid the bias, and the research should be focused on developing novel assays targeting the crucial part of the RNA genome, which we actually saw was the one where the housekeeping genes are there. And epidemiological studies with proper scheme should be continued. And there was a study in which it was found that viral infection through the digestive tract could also happen, and this should be carried out. This study should be carried out in a greater detail. And there was one more study by Durham et al. In 2020 where he says about the hypothesis of fecal oral contamination, but this is yet to be studied in a greater detail. So a study in greater detail could give us better insight about COVID-19 reinfection and how to tackle these problems. So these are the papers and the different journals, news articles which we have referred to make our presentation for the analysis. I would like to thank everyone for their patient listening. Thank you, sir.
No, great presentation. Wonderful. So now I think you can take some questions on the chat box.
Sure. Okay. So the first question is, in 3 papers of 2020, how many patients they tested for reinfection?
So let me just rephrase this actually. So you showed 3 studies, right? And they showed that after 4 days or 7 days or 12 days, they got reinfection. So what was the number of patients, or the very large group they tested, or it was just kind of hand-picked numbers? And based on what then they decided, how many are reinfected?
Sir, I think we'll have to do a detailed study on this because we were able to just get the number of days for the reinfection. The number of patients we will have to do a.
Right. No, I think you can also just look into the studies that what was the sample size they selected, to really feel the proportion of people who are getting infected. But that's something you can always share some information back to us. There's several questions here on the portal, so please take those.
Yes, yes. Okay, I think Joshua would want to take that question. I think Joshua can. Okay.
All right, go ahead.
Hello, sir. Like in 2020, there were actually more than 3 studies about this, around 62 studies. And the percentage, it varies so much between the studies because many studies had very less sample size, like 10 patients and 15 patients. So that's why some studies had like 70% reinfection rates. So we took these 3 studies as an like better representative since they had like more like 60, that kind of range of patients. So a review paper by Dow et al, which we have referenced, has whole details about all the 62 studies and about the sample size and everything. So.
Great. In fact, share the papers at the end with me. I can share the link over there to all the participants who are watching the presentation.
Okay, sir. I can add the link.
Great. All right. So you can continue with more questions here.
Okay, the second question is from Shweta Jha. Is it possible that reinfection from the same strain can occur within 1 month, since antibodies are reported to be present for 90 days? Okay, regarding this, yes, this reinfection from the same strain, as of now, that seems to be not a very good reason, because we know that antibodies are capable of recognizing the same protein. But we also saw that this reinfection from the same strain can occur in case the primary infection was not very strong, like the primary infection was very weak, due to which the immune response generated was very weak. So as a result, many antibodies or many memory cells would not have been produced against that particular virus. It could also be due to that a person is immunocompromised, that is, his immune system is very weak due to some other diseases. So because of this, yes, reinfection from the same strain can occur, but as a result, it is not a very confirmed or a very stable find. Okay, one more question. How does reinfection relate to vaccine efficacy? Would Sukriti like to take this question?
Regarding the vaccine efficacy, we are not in that case because we have not seen that part. So I think there is a recent paper that was authored by Sir himself that regarding the vaccine efficacy, if there are something like that. Sir, can you please elaborate, because we didn't have that.
Right. I think it's still early to comment on the vaccine efficacy for the reinfection kind of cases, right? Because still people are taking the most of the places first dose and some places second dose. So their efficacy are yet to be tested, but nevertheless the assumptions are that most mutations are happening in the spike protein, and given that it's spike proteins, what the antibodies, the vaccines have been raised against those. So that should provide long-term immune response. So I'm hoping that these vaccines should provide the more efficacy even towards the reinfection. Nevertheless, I think you can't say exactly the nature of these mutations and how that's going to really pan out in the future. But most of the predictions are that they should be effective. So that's the scientific assumptions as of now, given the nature of these vaccine which have been made based on the spike proteins.
Thank you, sir.
And also, I think it's open for all the participants to share their understanding or to share their knowledge as well. I think let's make it more interactive forum. We can have the questions here, but please feel free to answer something, or if you feel you can add some new context to that, feel free to add your comments on that in this forum. Anything else you want to take, or I think we are almost now. What you can do, you can actually type some of these answers while the second presentation is going on, because I see there are more and more questions coming in. Okay. All right,
Sure.
great. So, wonderful talk, and I think very clear, very crisp, very timely. You finished everything. So, congratulations for wonderful lecture.
Thank you so much.